Well, welcome back to the Hive. I'm Ben Gollings and I'm with Robin. We talked a bit about the Olympics during the Olympics and how impressive it was. And here's an opportunity now. We just want to recap because, I'm still actually buzzing from the whole occasion, in particular the sevens, but just the whole Olympics in itself. And we're going to have, in a few weeks, I think we're going to have another show on the road with the Paralympics, which will be exciting. But coming back into the sevens and looking back at what was an exceptional event and some serious heroics both in the men's competition and the women's competition. Robin, for you, if we look at the women's competition, what were some of the highlights and we look at the top four, what's some of the feedback you've got and what you reflect on?
Again, like one thing we talked about in the build up to the Olympic sevens is that obviously with the pandemic, the regular teams haven't played on the women or men's World Series. There's been different tournaments here and there. Fiji, we always knew that domestically they'd be preparing both the men and women, but obviously the Fijiana women were a huge surprise that they come through. And I think that's going to, explode the game, expand the game, light a fire for young Fijiana women forever. So watch out, World Series going forward, because that was the uplift that they needed and the excitement they needed. And some other teams like China really impressed me as well. How about for you?
Yeah, well, if you just look at that Fiji team from the women's perspective, they became pretty much like giant killers, and you always knew that they had the potential. But how fantastic it was for them to showcase that potential here in the Olympics. And I think the game that stood out was the game against New Zealand in the semi-final, taking them all the way to the wire and putting it into extra time. I think the New Zealand team had a true scare there, and we know Fiji came away with a bronze medal, which was just fantastic. But they almost could have been in a final playing out for a gold and a silver, which you wouldn't have counted for at the beginning of the tournament. So for me, it's hats off to the Fijian women. They were impressive. And I think the worry for a lot of people is they're only going to go from strength to strength. China, who I spoke about before, I thought they did fantastically well. They beat a lot of World Series teams along the way to positioning themselves in a really strong position, which for them is fantastic. And they're another side that can go from strength to strength and have got an abundance of athletes that they can start to develop. And that's a real catalyst for them, the whole Olympic inclusion and performing on the Olympics. And lastly, for me, the French, like having gone from just qualifying a few weeks prior to the Olympics almost to then actually almost taking a gold medal away with them. They took a silver and they ran New Zealand all the way to the wire, but they were fantastic. And it really threw out, for me, such a competitive environment and teams that you wouldn't have expected to be there. I don't think I predicted either Fiji or France to come away with a silver medal or a bronze medal at that stage. And obviously some of the bigger teams, the Canadians, the US, and the Australians didn't feature, which was a big surprise.
Well, going back to the 2018 Rugby World Cup sevens in San Francisco, it was the same teams, New Zealand and France, in that cup final of the World Cup. I think the French team are going to be a team to watch going forward. We'll touch on the swan song at the end here of some players that will be moving on. But the one thing about New Zealand, one thing about the best teams in the world, that they're not used to being under all kinds of pressure, right? So you're used to, if you're playing on a team, you're used to going forward the whole game. You're not used to having shots at your head, as we say in Canada with hockey, right? They're put under a lot of pressure, and they use their experience to kind of weather the storm. But I thought that first half of that gold medal game, France were pretty good on defense.
Yeah, I think they were. There was a few kind of real close calls that went against them that could have been the difference between them scoring points and then putting real pressure on, and unfortunately not, and allowing the New Zealanders to kind of get the whole take away the victory. But also credit to the New Zealand team, because in 2016 they were humongously disappointed, and rightly so, because they've been one of the top performers. It was fantastic Australia took it out, but they set themselves a goal of coming away with gold here, and they never took their eyes off the prize. And it was a fantastic that they took it away, because they're a pretty tight-knit side and they play some fantastic rugby, and they've got some of the best players in the world playing for them. So ultimately them winning it was still a massive occasion. And for New Zealand, pretty impressive that they hold in the female side of the game now. I think they got gold medal in Olympics, gold medal in Commonwealth Games. They've won the World Cup. There's not much that this team hasn't achieved, which is pretty impressive. And they can give themselves a big pat on the back for the hard work they put into it.
Yeah, and I think for the teams that missed the mark, some of the teams you named earlier, I don't know if teams are coming in overconfident or too confident, and some of the underdogs, and I always like an underdog. They're coming in hungrier, right? They're coming in with something to prove, and they were just getting on with it. The game gets going. It doesn't matter how many people are in your corner. It's just leave it on the field, and anybody can win. So, kudos to China, teams like Fiji, and of course France for pushing it. And I just want to give a shout out, I guess, to GB, your motherland. Unfortunately, they're twice in a row, 2 Olympics in a row where they've just missed the mark, but a top 4 placement. That team will be coming back hungry. And then, I'd like you to weigh in on this, Ben, but obviously GB had a tough go behind the scenes, loss of funding, loss of support, and they really rallied, both the men and the women, to make their Olympic dreams come true. So when you don't support your programs, you may not always get the results. So we'll be looking for Great Britain to come back in 2024 in Paris.
For the GB side, it was heartbreaking, knowing how much effort they put into it and the journey they had, and to come away again without a medal, losing that third, fourth battle, actually seeing them almost the similar experience, could have put themselves into a final. It was close call for them, and just such a shame. They met a good side in France, and France looked a bit shakier in the quarterfinal, but they pulled themselves together in that semi-final and took it to GB, and it was a shame. And then in that semi-final, in the third, fourth match with Fiji, Fiji showed some of their class, and unfortunately for GB, they just didn't quite have enough left in the tank. But I think they can go away with their heads held high. They were impressive, and I think you'll only see that team get stronger and stronger again. I think we're going to see GB play out on the World Series, so you'll get to see that team be able to gel more, have more time together, and in theory be even better prepared than they already were coming into the next Olympics. So it's tough for them, but if I was to call it, I'm pretty sure you may see them medal come Paris in 2 or 3 years' time. So it is heartbreaking. I'd love to see the medal, and can't take it away from those teams that did perform. And then, Robin, moving on to the men's, where there was some epic games played as well. What were your takeaways? What were your takeaways from the men's competition? That obviously Fiji winning a double gold is a big topic, but how did you see it?
Well, I always had Argentina. Just watching them, as far as I guess one thing I touched on the preview was just like the Pumas 15 side last year. COVID preparation, they're all split up virtually, training on their own in coordination with their performance staff, and then upsetting and doing damage against the Wallabies and the All Blacks in the 15 side. So we were looking for the same kind of grit and determination from Gomez Cora's team. So for me, seeing them perform as well, like watching them play in Spain earlier this year, and then obviously winning in LA, they had some momentum. They got some young guys. My boy Moneta, that guy's box office. I'd put that guy in any team, and to be that young and to perform and express yourself at that level, and just seeing what that does, like just seeing that excitement. I mean, that's what the Olympics is all about. So as a Canadian, man, it was fun to watch the RGs. How about you?
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, again, coming back to Argentina, they were a team that they were always competitors in any sevens competition, and we saw that when they played in a World Cup final in 2009. However, the improvements and the way they looked in this Olympics was another level on the way they performed, and I think it was the consistency. And I just wonder if, what a big call when their captain got a red card, and you knew his heart sank. But yet that team rallied, and it was your boy Moneta who then scored 2 back-to-back tries to put them in contention of that opportunity to get into a semi-final was impressive. And I do wonder if that decision, although it would have gone against them in the game, actually just brought that team even closer together and boy, did they fight. I think they even went down to 5 people at one point during that game. So, I mean, hats off to them. And taking away a bronze medal is, I know I've seen some of the celebrations going on currently, and Santiago's a pretty good friend, and, you know, fantastic for him and the effort that he's put into this team and his players. I mean, what an epic way to finish an Olympics. And, you know, we talk about GB, tough call again on GB coming up in the 4th position, same as the women. But on that side, they lost Tom Mitchell, which was probably a big blow to them. Probably lost a little bit of that direction that they would have needed in that 3rd, 4th playoff to come away with a medal. But if we move topic, what are your thoughts? That final, that gold medal, back-to-back gold medalists, Fiji.
Well, you and I were talking a little earlier about being able to turn it on and turn it off, and the Fijians, you know, they're sleepers, right? They're like predators. They know when to kill. And one thing I always talk about from a coaching aspect with people is managing your batteries, your energy levels, right? Your energy systems. You know, if you run up the score too high and gas yourself, you know, you're not going to have it when it counts. So they'll just they'll knock you off in the pool rounds. Do as little or as much as they need to, and then when it's time to go, I mean, you can speak to when they want to turn it on, they're invincible. As far as I'm concerned, New Zealand, very unfortunate. Clark Laidlaw's team, I don't think anybody was better prepared. But Fiji on the day, just, I mean, those guys they were class. I don't know how anybody would stop them on the day.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting coming into the tournament. Fiji, I'm not sure, lost to New Zealand. You know, that was quite a big in the preparations. Obviously, in the last World Series they had, but in the preparations leading into it, in the last friendly competition they had, Fiji pretty much dominated that, and I don't think lost a game, which he would have boosted their confidence, but just showed how good they are when it comes to playing the big teams. And, you know, they started with that shaky start against Japan, but whenever you watch Fiji, you never want to rest on your laurels and think that that's going to be them and that you've got them for the taking. And they just slowly improved. And their quarterfinal, semi-final, final was impressive. And I, you know, for me, it's just the balance. Whether they start with this particular 7 they did or they bring people on, nothing really changes. And they just got weapons. And you just see Jerry Tuai just pulling the strings at the back. And, you know, I think a great story for them to go back-to-back gold medalists. And we'll talk about Wainakolo, who was just an impression the whole through the tournament. And he came on and just exploded. I mean, he was just like, give me the ball. And I think he just ran round the whole of the New Zealand team at one point, bumped somebody off to really set up that kind of 2 or 3 tries that they raced off to at the beginning of that final, which was just fantastic. And, you know, some of these guys, in fact, 99% of this team hadn't experienced what an Olympics was like. And, you know, the other guy, Jerry Tuai, double gold Olympic medalist. It's not got a bad ring to it, but who better to deserve it than someone like himself, who's been a standout for a very long time now with that Fijian team.
For me, like, I just want to say, like, over across all the tournament, like the entire tournament for the men and women, like, obviously COVID played a factor in the preparation, the lack of games. But one thing for me as a coach is there some game management across the board. Like, some teams going fast when typically they go slow. Some teams going slow when they typically go fast. And, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, a lot of these guys and girls, they've got years of experience. They're at a masterclass level, but you bring the occasion of the Olympics and it changes everything. You know, the occasion changes everything because your heart is driving the bus, not your head. So that for me was interesting to see as with a coach's eye, but also, you know, it's very, you know, why we play. It's fun. And just kind of going back to the roots of, you know, the passion of these athletes playing on the occasion. At times got the best of them in a good way and the worst of them in other ways. So for me, I thought it was a bit of an equalizer.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and, you know, for someone like Gareth who came in to take over the helm, having had a team that's just become gold medalists, it's not an easy task, and he steered that ship, you know, really well. And then during that tournament, he's managed that team fantastically, and, you know, I think the great thing is he stood back and allowed his team to play, but yet he was the person behind there, pulling some of the strings and making some pretty astute decisions with his picking of the team, and also the likes of the tactics he went into those games with. So, fantastic for someone like him to come away with Fiji becoming the 2 times gold medalists. And the other thing, if I look at it, we tear away. We talk about characters of coaches and characters of teams. It was heartbreaking for the US, who came in there with big expectations, and rightly so. They were a top 3 side coming into this competition, but just came a bit unstuck, and you just knew how much it meant to them. You saw it on their faces, and that was the similar, and I think that was part of the enjoyment, as you said, was seeing how much this really meant to players, and I think it was fantastic, and I think that added to not just people winning it, but there's the whole occasion that we saw across the Olympics, which for me was fantastic to see. And, really, I think took sevens to another level, which is what we wanted. But saying that, there's also, it came probably to the end of a bit of an era for sevens for a few people. When we look at some of these sides now, there's people there that have been around for over a decade playing, and I'll let you allude to a few of them, but there's a few swan songs that may bow out, but can bow out with their heads held high.
Yeah, I think if I talk about the Canadian side, I mean, nothing's official, and I haven't heard, but you got to think about it. Hirayama, who's been playing since we were playing, he was 18 years old. He's in his early to mid 30s, still the top of his game, but this was kind of what he's been holding out for a long time, and I'm so thankful that he's got the opportunity. You got a Harry Jones. There's a number of guys that have been in the Canadian side for a number of years, same with the US side. And then, looking at the women's side, the New Zealand side, like those girls have won, 2, 3 15s World Cups, couple sevens World Cups. You already listed everything else. So there's a number of players, from the women's side as well, that it'll be interesting. And when you look at the RGs, where you got a young guy like Moneta, it's exciting that there's going to be some young blood, and from again a Canadian North American aspect, I'm excited to see these new wave of Canadian boys and women taking over and moving the game forward from where those legends and pillars like yourself from what you did in your days that set the World Series up for success. And we got some fresh, exciting boys and girls coming through that I've been thankful enough to watch them fill those shoes here. So as we lead into the Vancouver, 2 World Series events during a pandemic, thankfully Canada is the next best thing to New Zealand, but we're hosting 2 World Series events. If you would have told me a decade ago, Ben, we would have had one, I never would have believed you.
Yeah, and I think, just highlighting that some of the people that have really paid, a lot of hard work and time put into the sevens, and it's great to see what they've done. Likes of a Mickelson, a Kurt Baker, a Tom Mitchell, a Dan Norton. You don't know where these players are at, and I hope we still see them playing because, in my view, keep playing until you can, because when you stop, it's such a different life, and also there's a lot that doesn't fill it. So I hope we do see him playing, but I think there will be a bit of a changing in the guard. But just to say, they've been fantastic advocates of the game. But also, I think in that, and as you said, how much the Olympics has kind of put sevens back on the map. It went really quiet during COVID, and I think it was fantastic to see it just explode. And it was one to watch in the Olympics as a competition. And then now, hopefully, we can build on that momentum. And as you said, we've got Canada stepping up with 2 tournaments in Vancouver on your doorstep, and then Edmonton as well, which is great. We're not going to see all the teams, but I think this year it's not about a World Series. It's about seeing sevens come back and teams playing and having that competition again. And I think it's brilliant. And, let's hope it rolls out all the way to Dubai in December and potentially Cape Town. And then we can look forward to 2022 and sevens really back where it is and growing and showing it to be the spectacle that it is.
What I'm excited about is Dallin will actually be in Vancouver, and Karen, the Gaz, she'll be in Vancouver. We'll obviously be missing you down under, but if it happens in Dubai, at least Dallin and I and you will be there. So it'd be nice to get the whole group together, and we'll be covering the World Series live on the ground. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty more to talk about. And let's get excited about it. I hope to come in live with you when you're live in the stadium in Vancouver. I've never been there, so it's one for me to get to. But I'm excited, and that's been a good wrap. And you've heard it from myself. You've heard it from my good friend here in Canada. Let's just see what comes of the next few tournaments. Thank you from Rugby Hive.